What is the crack, folks? Clearly, I'm having fun and games with the old streaming equipment. I'm trying to get myself prepped for the stream, so it seems I'm a little bit ahead of myself, but sure, that's not the end of the world. I might as well be too early as opposed to too late. I wasn't planning on starting for a few minutes, but thankfully I've managed to think ahead, get everything prepared, and get cracking. So today on the old hobby table, hopefully the screens aren't too confusing the way they're laid up. I tried to get an overhead shot and then just kind of, a general look at my desk. So you can see what I'm mucking around with. I got one or two bits and pieces since the last stream. I was advised by Sid, one of our war bosses, to buy a shed load of brushes on the cheap, because I'm finding some of me old brushes are coming to the end of their lifespan, and I've had them for years and years. And then some of the ones that I've bought, like these Humbrol brushes, they're not like, even if I show you there, like they're not the Mae West, like, you know what I mean? I mean, they're all right, but they're not great. So I've just been buying cheapo brushes, like a load of them, so I can not worry about beating the snot out of them and being able to paint up, because inevitably I plan on painting up quite a few bits and pieces for Battletech. So that's what I'm cracking on with. I'm going to be throwing more paint on the infantry. I was digging up some of the vehicles that I have stashed away. We've got a lot of 100 or 285th scale vehicles from GHQ, a load of trucks as well from various nations, sort of modern era ones. I think these are German trucks. I can't remember. So I've got a load of trucks as well that I've bought in, because I'm firmly of the opinion that we should have little bits of vehicles and stuff around the battlefields. I think they'll look interesting. They sort of add to the scale. You know what I mean? Like if these are the infantry and this is the mech, I think it sort of ties into it a bit more, if you get me. People sort of visualize a bit more. It's like, oh, well, that's squads of infantry. So, if you have a truck, and the truck is the correct scale, so I think the infantry are a little bit big. But, if you have a load of trucks, and then, doing stuff like convoy missions, you can do missions where you're attacking convoys, or you're doing campaigns, or like logistics as well. Most of an army is going to be logistics rather than the fighting force, so you're bound to have a lot of trucks. I'm going to get some paint on the old palette there and start and get some more priming done on these infantry. I've only got 3 stands left, and then we could start throwing some base colours. I found with painting these guys that the first time around when I was painting the infantry, I was painting them on their stand. So this would have been the first base I did. And the way I painted these guys up was that I painted the miniatures, so the infantry, I painted the infantry first. And then I sort of put the basing material in, which is this stuff here. I'm using like Vallejo ground texture. It would help if it wasn't reversed, but yes, Vallejo ground texture, rough white. It's really good stuff. I like it. It's got a really fine detail, so it sort of fits with the scale. So that's what all this white base on the basing is the Vallejo ground texture. So I painted, this is the first sort of stand of them I did first. I painted them up. And then I put the basing on, but I found that it was pretty tricky trying to get the basing on without hitting the guys, because I think there's 1 or 2 of them, if we look in underneath, obviously them being like small scale infantry, you're not really going to go looking for them, but there's 1 or 2 spots where I managed to clip the infantry with the basing material and then the subsequent paint, that I decided that maybe it'd be better if I paint the basing and then paint the infantry after the fact. I get that I may not get everything, every little detail on them, but I'm doing them in like US olive drab. I'm doing their boots black, their weapons metal, and their visors gold, and then a little bit of flesh for the faces, and then that's it. But I feel that will be easier, a lot cleaner to do. So if I start painting the base first and then the infantry, I find it'll be a lot easier to paint them up. So that's what I'm going to be cracking on with now. We have a couple of people here already. What's the crack, folks? Yous are here early enough. My apologies for starting the stream early. I did not mean to. That means that OBS, which I use for streaming, and YouTube integrate for live streams, has sort of changed a little bit. What I used to be used to, you'd set up the stream and tell it to stream to the platform, and then you'd have to press on YouTube to actually start the stream, whereas now it's like start streaming and it just starts streaming. So we're a little bit early. Lorcan is saying, what's up, dog? I might have a lot of support vehicles coming in Brian's current Fantasy Wealth order. Ooh, very nice. I managed to dig up some of the vehicles I have as well, Lorcan, since we're all looking at vehicles and thinking about planetary defense forces. So I have these guys. I think these are Rommels or Pattons or whatever. So I've about 4 of every vehicle that I have. All the vehicles I have 4 of them. So I've a few bits and pieces. I have a force there that I had started painting up that needs more paint put on it. So I'll crack on with that. I've been messing around with sponge weathering as well. So I'll just show you this. The Thunderbolt. So this guy is actually metal. And I don't know if it's coming up great for you, but I've been doing a bit of sponge weathering on his legs, more so. So doing like dark rust, sponge weathering it with dark rust, and then coming back in with a brush and hitting it up with metal. As you can tell, I haven't decided what colour to do the basing yet. I was thinking green to match, but I think I might go for like a mud colour. But yeah, I've been mucking around with the sponge weathering as well, trying that on mix. And that's looking half decent. I think it's looking good. You know what I mean? Coming up with your own unit colours and having a bit of fun with it. Sure, why not? But today I will be mostly cracking on with basing these guys. What's everyone else going to be painting today? Gitman here saying, what's the crack? What's the story, Jude? How are you, bud? Makeshift ghillie suit. This is true. A makeshift ghillie suit. Nobody will see you coming. That's the plan anyway. Check out the Tau Wraith Minis on Wind Metal Steel. They're wearing optical camo ponchos. Ooh. Very nice. I'm sure you could do like some crazy stuff paint scheme wise with infantry, but in my humble my humble opinion regarding them is that they're small enough to just do a US olive drab. I'm just looking for a generic sort of military color. Do you know what I mean? Just a generic military green, and just not paint them up as any specific force or any specific faction. They're just like a defensive force or a garrison unit. And my thinking would be that the majority of them, unless they're like specifically exotic planets that have their own sort of weird flora and fauna that are different colors, like the majority of them, there's going to be like a military green of some form or another. So it's a pretty generic sort of safe bet I'm going for here, where I can get the most use out of them without tying them down too much. And that's the idea. I'll be able to use them as for my own troops if I'm using them in like a mercenary unit, or use them as the opponent's defending forces, say if we're doing raids and whatnot. If you're doing a raid on an ammo depot or supply cache, that sort of thing, you know, having a few trucks knocking about the place and a lot of infantry stands, it makes sense that, you know, the majority of the enemy territory is going to be held by infantry. And then, you know, I would think that reaction forces would come in with, you know, the heavier armor, maybe fast elements of vehicles. So hovercraft coming in quick, they'd be quick to react, and then maybe light mechs, and then escalating up. You know, that's actually, you know, wouldn't be a bad scenario, that, you know. Keeping saying he's busy helping the mother with salting the chicken. Will be painting or more beast snagger, boys. So, no, very good. It's good to hear you're helping your mother in the kitchen and advancing your culinary skills there, Jude. Glad to hear you won't starve when you eventually, you know, spread your wings and leave the nest and some important life skills, learning how to cook. I learned that not everyone has learned to cook, or indeed learned quite a lot of the basic skills in life. You sort of learn this when you move out from home. You get roommates, and you're sort of you're perplexed. It's like, well, what do you mean you don't know how to use the washing machine, or you don't know how to use some of the cooking utensils and such? I found that very surprising. But it all depends, really. Cubbins Gate is saying, I too have many mechs to paint. Got to do a lance at a time or I'll go mad. Yeah, that's a good approach, actually. Excuse me for a sec. Dust everywhere there is. Dust everywhere. I did a bit of cleaning up of the desk so I'd actually have some space before the stream, and it has kicked up dust everywhere. But onwards and upwards we'll endeavour. So was the Gitmans. Cubbins Git was saying, I have too many mechs to paint, got to do a lance at a time or I'll go mad. That's actually what sort of spurred me to actually start painting stuff again for Battletech, was getting into the game and enjoying playing it. So making lances. We have a gaming group that we do a game every 2 weeks, where we meet up. There's a pub, we use the function room or a bar, whatever you want to call it. We use a function room there, and there's a group of us, me and a few guys, organise. Basically, we make a Battletech meetup for our city, for Dublin. And, been getting games in and enjoying it, and enjoying playing the game, and enjoying the community. And I've gone to a couple of tournaments already this year for Battletech, and I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed, the community. I've enjoyed the competitions, watching other players play as well, like learning things off of veteran players. And yeah, it's rekindled my hobby mojo, which is good. It actually makes me want to paint miniatures again, which was kind of something I didn't realize before, that I kind of have to enjoy playing a game in order to want to hobby, if you get me. Whereas I wasn't getting the same experience out of other war games for a long time, so I thought it was just I didn't want to do a hobby in general. But apparently that's not it at all. It's if I enjoy playing the game, I seem to want to get miniatures painted up, and paint up the way you're saying, where it's like, oh well, I'll try a lance, and generally in the group we play like 7,500 BV, so I'll come up with a concept and be like, oh, maybe an Orban lance. And that's how I started painting up my 2 Victors and 2 Hunchbacks as an Orban lance, and then play with that force and try it out. And that spurs you on to want to paint them, you know what I mean? And it's not too difficult either, because the amount of miniatures required for the game, you're looking at what, 4, 5, 6 miniatures at a push if you want to do like a really light lance, or Comstar level 2 or something like that. There's not a massive miniature count that you're getting stuck with. It's not a case of I need to paint 30 Orc boys because that's the play style I like in order to play 40k or the likes, or other games that you're gonna need like maybe 12 or 14 miniatures to play a game. The threshold, or the barrier of entry required in regards to painting miniatures is pretty low for Battletech, and it doesn't take quite a lot either. It's pretty. I found painting at smaller scale actually quite enjoy. Lorcan is saying, assuming Fantasy World have everything I want in stock, I'm getting a Karnov and bits to repair when I already have a pair of cooling trucks. Ooh! I was only talking about the Karnov. That's the transport that sometimes has an AC-20 hidden in it. But I've actually been thinking a lot about how to transport these troops on the battlefield, and what vehicles I'll kind of need. And a few Karnovs wouldn't go amiss. I've 4 hovercraft for transporting these dudes, but I don't have any armoured APCs or whatnot. But then again, I've a few trucks here as well. You know, I've started painting someone up. So you could just have dudes in the backs of trucks and just dismounting them onto the table. But obviously, it's not as swanky as dropping them in via like VTOL aircraft. You know, but it's doable. It could be doable. It'll be fun, man. You know what I mean? I need to get some artillery pieces as well. I'm thinking some artillery support for these guys would be nice. I'm just trying to think of like planetary defense. What would they have on their arsenal? You know, artillery pieces, plenty of troops, trucks for moving ammo around, logistics, that sort of thing. What's the typical type of thing you're going to come across when you're doing an invasion of a planet or such? You know what I mean? You're contracted in to do a recon mission on this planet and see what forces are there. What are you likely to come up against? What are the common units? That's the sort of mentality I'm having at the moment regarding Battletech and what units I have and what forces. And then there's whatever I'm playing with as well. So I still haven't decided what color scheme to give the to give all the mechs that I have. I was thinking maybe of doing this color scheme again. I've done this on the Thunderbolt. I've enjoyed it. This is kind of like a, see if I can get on screen a bit better. This is kind of like a tournament color scheme I've come up with. So it's like green, white, and orange for Ireland. And then I want to see if I can get some custom decals made so that you can have an Irish flag on the corner. And then I'm thinking maybe on the knee pad do like the county I'm from, Dublin, and then ideally I'd like to do some personal heraldry for my family name, which is in black and white. So it'd be like a tournament colour scheme, because I've played in a couple of tournaments now and I'd like to do a colour scheme. And I think it would be cool if I did this, because over the years then I can say I can paint up the miniatures appropriate for the tournament, which you don't need to do, but it'd be a nice touch. And then I'll be able to go back to those miniatures and look at them and go, oh, this was from this tournament and I remember playing and how well I did, or how, you know, how it died, or how the match played out for that specific mech, you know, or reuse them as well. And then people, you know, it'll be cool looking for people as well, especially if you're like flying abroad. I'm thinking about going to Germany later in the year, flying abroad, playing one of the German tournaments. I just need to look at the dates and time off, you know, yourself. I am totally missing the comments here. Let's see what else. What were we saying? 2 packs of Ironwind metal flatbed trucks, 2 packs of gun trailers, 2 J27 ammo transport with thumper guns. Oh, nice. A mobile repair vehicle and some other bits. The lot will go on my Karnov J27 mobile HQ, long toms, mash trucks, gun bunkers to make a great little headquarters section for the exact sort of scenario. Yeah, that sounds sweet. Like, I actually like that. One of my friends, Sci-Fi, one of the other Orky friends, he actually sent me over a couple of bits from Epic 40k back in the day. So it would be like so it's like a little dish, so it's sort of like a communication bunker or something like that. And then there's actually, I have a couple of them here, but I can only see one at the moment, so I won't waste my time too much. But there's like an ammo dump, you know what I mean? So it's like barrels and little tarps and stuff, and it's not great to look at now because it's white metal, so the light's going to be contrasting, but it's the right scale. Like, it's old school 6mm, so it suits well with the trucks and stuff, you know what I mean? So you can pick up a few little bits and pieces as you're going, you know what I mean? But ordering them in is definitely awesome sauce. Sweet infantry, hope you don't encounter a fire starter. Probably mostly Zen is here. What's the crack, Tom? Well, I'm really got a hoover and dust my hobby room too. Yeah, man, it's really, the dust is really killing me. I tried to open the windows a bit to try and let a bit of air in. I've had to leave one of the windows open so I don't slowly cook to death while we're going through this stream, because it's warm enough here that I'll probably like slowly become a poached egg in my own skin. It's really warm. It's in the 20s Celsius wise, which I know temperature wise isn't warm, but the humidity is really high in Ireland. So it's a very sort of smothering type of weather, you know what I mean? And our infrastructure isn't really built in households for warm weather, if you get me. We're more accustomed to things being a little colder. So with the humidity and lack of AC units in Ireland in general, it's a bit toasty. You know what I mean? But then I saw in the news there not too long ago. You know, Inger land has been slowly getting cooked as well at the same time. A lot of fires breaking out. Temperatures in the 40 Celsius temperatures down in the southeast in London. So I'm kind of glad I don't live in London anymore in a little pokey bedroom in an apartment. Kind of glad I'm not there to have to suffer through it, thankfully, because that would be unbearable. Like, would be. I don't know how people survive on that. It's madness. Classic or Alpha Strike? I play Classic Gubbins Gits. I normally aim for Classic Battletech. I like Alpha Strike as well. It serves a function, but mostly Classic. All Classic so far, but I plan on doing Alpha Strike in a month or two. This is true. You are planning on doing an Alpha Strike game. I may or may not participate. Keep on saying is to do some highlights on one boy, then I've got 4 more to paint, and no, I ain't batch painting because it's absolutely murders my soul. Yeah, I'm kind of the same. Anytime I got, the enthusiasm to paint some works, I'd try and paint 30 of them at the same time, and it would, after a few days, it would kill it off. But strangely enough, do you know what I actually really enjoyed painting? Because they're pretty straightforward to paint. I actually enjoyed painting grots. I think I painted up 120 grots, like fully painted, in Rebel grot colours. I mean, they're absolutely garbage on the tabletop, but I really enjoyed painting them. I thought they were fun to do. I gave them all their little red bandanas and such, and the white star of the rebellion. So like red bandanas and red loincloths or whatever, and they're pretty handy to paint up as well. Like, because once you got the skin done on the grots, you don't have too much to do. They're not absolutely covered in detail. Like you'll have a gun, maybe they'll have a helmet or 1 or 2 bits and pieces, but in general, they're once you've got the skin painted on them, that's like 90% of the model, which is nice. Which is something that you don't really get with the orc boys. They're covered in belts and pouches and other bits and bobs of detail, which isn't bad. But when you're painting a lot of them, unlike me, you like to pick out that detail. It really sort of slows the process down. I have several friends who, just paint over the belt buckles and straps and all those extra gubbins and bits. They just paint them the same colours as the clothing. And from a distance, yeah, it's not going to make much of a difference. But just for me, with blood axes, I felt like, I'd have to paint up those little bits and pieces, but it really slows things down. I mean, it looks amazing when they're done, but it's you have to sort of work on the balancing act of how much detail is enough detail to your satisfaction without at the same time burning out because you've put too much detail on a miniature. You know what I mean? That's the thing I kind of struggled with the orcs. Whereas if it's this smaller scale stuff, it's a lot. I don't know. It's very odd for me. Painting wise, it seems to be a lot more straightforward. I don't have to worry too much, especially with the infantry. I don't have to go overboard with the detail, like picking out their little faces and flesh, and doing a little bit of wash on it. Like maybe that's too much, but it's great. Mostly saying 1 at a time is fine. Man, is it a 6 mil scale Scarnier? Yeah, it's not too far off 6. I think it's like 1 and 285th scale, which I think is supposed to be about 6 mil. Orca is saying the main troop transporter uses the Hyro WIGE. It has an 8-ton bay, but I usually use them to carry 2 squads of battle armor. Yeah, battle armor take up more space, don't they? Or weird real-world vehicle, a stub-wing pseudo-aircraft that acts more like a hovercraft in terms of movement and behavior. Oh, it sounds like a wing and ground effect type craft. I know the Soviets built massive one of them back in the Cold War era. What was it called? Like the Caspian Sea Monster or something like that. They built some like wing and ground effect craft, which are kind of like aircraft, but they're also not. You know what I mean? Pretty interesting concept and pretty cool to see. Gitman is saying, why don't you try doing the paint scheme for your mech in Mech Warrior? That's kind of the same sort of paint scheme as that sort of tournament paint scheme. I might try that actually. I should probably fire up Mech Warrior 5 and look at the paint scheme that I used to play and try and paint that on a miniature. Grey Primers here. What's the story, bud? What about you, big lad? What's the story, bud? Glad you could join. Imagine that stuff in Steel Warrior Studio. 3D printed terrain set for the base map pack, grasslands and neoprene mats. Yeah, that looks sweet, man. Where Gubbins gets is he's had 30 plus degrees Celsius. Oh, sweet Jesus! I wouldn't be able for that sort of thing. I mean, I drove to Tipperary last week, and some parts of the drive it was literally like 33 degrees Celsius, and I don't have an air conditioning unit in my car, so I'm literally going down the motorway with the windows open because, like, just blowing the hot air coming through the engine bay at myself, even on full cold, it's like, no, it's still hot. Blowing that was just unbearable. It's crazy. I do a bit of fishing along the coast just as a hobby. And one of the days I went out, the wind was actually like, I think it was about 25 or 30 knots. So it was windy enough and the day was warm. But I didn't mind. Like, it was, you know, normally I would have found it uncomfortable if it was, you know, the lower temperatures we're used to. You would have been blasted cold. But because of how warm it's been lately, you know, the wind coming in off the sea and blasting you actually isn't that bad. It seems a lot more bearable along the coast than inland. The temperatures tend to get a fierce bit toasty, all right. Mostly saying it was melty. Yeah, starting a new job tomorrow. Woo, well done, Larkin. Congrats on the new job. Thomas saying 37 to 38 degrees Celsius where I was. Sweet Jesus. Mrs. Sen got us an AC for her bedroom last year, which was amazing. Oh, I'm jealous. I'm very jealous. I would absolutely love an AC. I should probably try and get my hands on one. But I don't reckon I'd be able to use an AC during the streams anyway. You'd hear the thing in the background humming away. I used to have terrible problems with the old computer and the fan in it. They used to be really noisy until I upgraded them to half decent ones now. Mind you, that was a while ago. But yeah, an AC unit at night time. I mean, if you can afford the electricity bill at the end of the month, well worth it. Gonna be getting on a bus to Navan in about 12 hours time. Good man. Would you consider dry brushing some grey onto those guys before you get to work on the base coat? Simulate pre-shading. It'd help create the illusion of depth. I actually did that with the Thunderbolt, believe it or not. I did it with this guy, and then I tried to put the green on thin enough. Because I was mucking around. Because he's a metal miniature, I'm not too afraid of getting it wrong, if you get me. So it's like with metal miniatures, I feel there's a bit more freedom with them for me because they're easy enough to strip, to take the paint back off them. Whereas the likes of the plastic miniatures, I feel a bit more apprehensive with being creative with them in case I do mess up the paint job. Because I find it's not as easy to strip them off, or getting your hands on the products that you can strip plastic miniatures off easily without, you know, melting the thing isn't as straightforward. I don't particularly like using Dettol. It makes an awful bloody mess. I've had a few bad experiences with it in regards to the miniatures. There's one or two things I've been told about. There's BioStrip, I think it is BioStrip 20 or whatever it's called, off of Amazon. I've heard that's good. But yeah, like I did that with this guy. I gave him like the black undercoat as always, and then I actually have like a pot of Surface Primer Grey, like a big old bottle of it here, and I try to do kind of like a dry brush, but sort of downwards, because I didn't want to dry brush the underneath as well, so I sort of dry brushed in a sort of top down motion and try to avoid the darker areas underneath. But I don't know if it's made much of a difference with the miniature. Like, maybe the lighting isn't helping in that regard, but yeah, I haven't really noticed too much if it's made much of a difference. Maybe it has, and I just can't notice it, if you get me. But for the likes of the infantry, I don't think I'll bother. They're too small. Like, maybe with the mechs I might experiment, but not with the infantry. Like, the infantry are way too small. You know, like even just pinking out their visors, because I did it with this guy here. Like, even picking out their, you can just see the shine of the gold off their visors. Even picking out their visors is like kind of superfluous. You don't really need to. Picking out their guns is fine, but maybe on mechs. Maybe I'll try it out on some more mechs. I've a few metal mechs that are spare that I could do such things with and experiment with. Sure. If you don't try, you won't know. Isn't that what they say? Give it a bash. Modelling for advantage are here. What's the crack? Kaiser and Johnny B. How are you keeping, lads? How are you surviving the melting weather over in the UK at the moment? Have you too been slowly poached? I was watching that battle report you guys did. It was a Flames of War, and I have to say I was really impressed with the table setup. Like, it a lot of work had gone into that table that you lads set up, and it looked very good. Very visually pleasing to the eye, I have to say. But looks like fun, alright. But yeah, that table, boy Jesus, I was jealous. I was terribly jealous. Yeah, not gonna say any. WIG stands for WIG, Wing and Ground Effect. The Soviet one is called the Ekranoplan. Yes, the Ekranoplan. I remember now. I had like several jet engines at the front and a shed load of multiple missiles. Yeah, they were mad looking, but pretty cool. Keep on saying, great thing about the Beast Snagger boys, the majority of them is skin, and most of the pelts and beast skins look good without any dry brush or highlights. But that's handy. You should be able to get them painted up quick enough then, if the majority of them is skin. I actually don't mind painting skin for orcs because it's sort of the unifying army colour for me. Because I use blood axes, I tend to give different units different colours of camo, so I use the orc skin as the unifying visual colour across the army, if you get what I mean. Mostly saying the same. We only use the AC if it gets really hot at night. It's about £6 a day to run, but for the few nights a year we do use it, we actually sleep. Yeah, I mean, £6 for a decent night's sleep instead of a restless night's sleep. That sounds like value for money for me, you know, in those handful of days. Obviously you wouldn't want to be running it every day, but those handful of nights where it's just unbearable, I think that's a price worth paying. Seems reasonable enough. Said he's using maybe 3 or 4 days this month. That's not too bad. £24, 4 days rest. Don't you use the tub of pink stuff to strip the minis? I did try to use the tub of pink stuff, but I found I've actually stopped using it now because it's like an abrasive. What was actually cleaning it for me was when you scrub with it, and there's like a grit in it. So it's when you scrub with it, it cleans the raised areas, but it doesn't actually get into the deep sort of recesses of the miniatures. And that's that's not exactly ideal for what you want. I'd found that the miniature that I actually stripped really well with it, I had steeped it in something else prior. I tried the purple Dettol. There's like a Dettol that's like lavender, but that doesn't actually work the way that the orange Dettol does. It smells a hell of a lot better, but it's missing a key ingredient that the orange one has, so it doesn't actually strip the miniatures. I'd soaked it in that first and then used the purple stuff on it. So then I think that's how it worked. But yeah, there's like an abrasive in it, so it's not ideal for stripping minis. You know what I mean? But like for scrubbing down your glass, kitchen top and stuff like that, are really hard surfaces, like your bathtub, or we've got like a glass instead of a shower curtain. We've got like this glass sort of divide, you know. for cleaning the likes of that. Yep, great. Miniatures, not so much, sadly. I'm going to say, I tend to prime grey and do a black wash on pretty much everything. Well, yeah, I suppose, yeah. That would sort of pre-shade the miniatures for you. Kaiser saying, why thank you, we make an effort with our tables. Well, it definitely shows, I can say. You lads do put on a decent spread. I haven't managed to catch one of your live shows in a while, but I do actually enjoy when you guys get someone on and you talk about different historical periods. Like there was a while back where you had someone on and you were talking about the Phoenician Wars, I think it was. Because I didn't actually know very much about that period of time historically, where the Romans were fighting the Phoenicians, I think it was. Or was it the Punic Wars? Whoever, the lads who were on like the North African coast, who then went into Spain and then rampaged, got the elephants over Italy or whatever. Got the elephants over the Alps. And then, you know, the Romans still beat them. But sure, what can you do? Stephen Cross is here. Hello, Stephen. Welcome to the stream. What are we all painting, folks? What are we all painting? I'm cracking on with the Battletech infantry here, but what are the rest of you painting? Are you doing a bit of hobby? Are you getting paint on the miniatures? Are you here for the crack and the banter? Because there's plenty of that to go around. Talk the legs off a bleeding chair from giving the opportunity, you know, and enough tea to keep me fuel supplied, you know yourself. But what are we all painting? Have you been getting games in? I know Lorcan has, the cheeky devil. I say he was playing against one of our friends, Brian, last Thursday. I didn't manage to get a game in myself, but I actually don't mind. I got to watch a lot of other games, just because there was an odd number of people. Not that there was a lack of people. It was that there was actually quite a few folk at the evening. But yeah, they had an aerospace battle. That was pretty cool. Basically a space battle with fighters that are specifically designed in Battletech to go into space. And that was cool on the new aerospace mat that I've been sitting on for a few months. But there you go. I had it for a while. We had to cancel one of the events because the room was double booked. But then the lads got the opportunity to have a crack. And it looks good, actually. That new neoprene mat looks good. Keep on saying, I remember from one of your streams that Steve told me about the pink stuff and that it was great for stripping models. It works, like, it will get the paint off of miniatures, but it's an abrasive, so it really only works on the raised areas. To get into the detailed areas, you'd have to pick at it. So it's not, I mean, if you have nothing else, you can use it, but it's not great. You know what I mean? It's not ideal. It's not as good as I thought it was initially, should I say. I probably should have experimented a bit more before giving it praise. I mean, you know, if you want to go scrub the cooker for your mother, you know what I mean? You earn yourself some brownie points there, but it'll work well doing that. Stephen Cross is saying I was painting a lot of elemental point shoulders at lunch. Going to be painting some up during my time off soon. Oh, nice. Are they the new elementals in plastic, or are they older elementals? Because I have a load of elementals up here. Have a look. I have a load of them that'll need to be done up, and I don't know what colour scheme to give them either. Do I like divide them up into stars, so groups of 5? We'll divide them up into groups of 5 and then paint them up as specific clans, or will I just give them like a generic sort of colour scheme as well and then have at them that way, you know? I haven't quite decided. Not decided what way to go with them yet. The game, man. That was the Punic Wars. Oh yeah, Second Punic War was when Hannibal crossed the Alps and defeated the Roman armies wherever he went. That's the one, Jude, you have remembered what I vaguely have. Foxy saying it for me mostly been painting some grots and based a bunch of second-hand orcs. Oh yeah, that's right. I saw you that you had posted up pics of the second-hand orcs. I really should go digging in the shed and find a load of second-hand orcs that I bought like going on probably 8 years ago at this stage. I went a bit mad. Orcs weren't that popular, so like second-hand prices for stuff weren't that bad. You know what I mean? You could pick them up at reasonable prices, and I bought a good few of the older miniatures, like Second Ed, Rogue Trader, even the Third Ed orcs. I think I ended up with like 60 of the third edition Stormboys that are sort of the metal torso and metal rocket, and then just sort of plastic bodies and legs. I ended up with a load of them as well, reasonably priced, which I didn't mind. Because they were cheaper to buy than the actual like fully plastic Stormboys, you know what I mean? Prime them too, says Zen. I'll have to photograph my spares and we could swap sometime. Yeah, totally, man. Just yeah. Well, you'll have to remind me and I'll go through my spares and we'll get some swaps, because I know I'm missing a few and I'm sure I've got doubles of loads of them, and Rogue Trader ones as well. Of a few bits and pieces. But I'll have to dig through them. Just remind me. Of a head like a sieve at the best of times. You know yourself. Sims Cross is saying, and this weekend, my weekend that is, I'll be working on a Battletech project, doing some writing, etc. The new plastic LEs. Nice. Just hit them with a green contrast paint and some yellow for the shoulders and a bit of metal for the gun arm, and a bit on black in the exhausts. Yeah, I suppose I've a load of contrast paints that I got from I traded like some orcs I wasn't using with someone for them. I should probably use them or experiment with them and use them up, because I have them. But I think I'm a bit hesitant in that I don't want to tie myself into doing colour schemes with Games Workshop paint, because I know what GW are like. They change the formulas, they change the colour tones all the time over the years. Like I think they've changed their paint line like 3 or 4 times since I've been, well, mind you, I've been like wargaming for, I don't know, 25 years, but they're, over the years, if you're looking for consistency, you know, you're better off going with someone who's dedicated to doing paints. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to lean more into the likes of Vallejo. You know what I mean? At least the colours will be the same 10 years from now if I'm still painting a force up, you know. Man, it's because I'm a history buff. That's true, Jude. You are a history buff. Fair play to you. You can remember stuff the rest of us have forgotten. Good man yourself. Voodoo Fairy is here. What's the crack? Don't worry, Scare. You got me to be your memory bank. Fair play. Fair play. I'll let you remind me, Jude, anytime I forget. You can be me memory bank. For better or for worse, you can be me memory bank. So what I think is I will crack on with the green for the basing on these guys. Now, what I did for the green basing wise, there's not many retailers here in the city. So I live in Dublin City and I frequent quite a few of the model shops on my breaks. And that's where I've picked up the likes of like these sort of reverse clamping tweezers for basically for doing sponging. This was an El Cheapo one. I think this was about 10 quid. And then they didn't have any cheap ones left and I wanted a second one. So this is the Tamiya one, but this is about 20 quid a pop. It's expensive enough, but I decided to go for 2. One for like large sponge. Because I was finding when I was doing the sponging on the Thunderbolt that starting off initially with a large sponge, you do a bit of coverage, and then I found that I'd be switching to a smaller piece of sponge to sort of get in like little nooks or crannies or just a little bit of detail. So I found like I'd probably need 2 because I'm going to be doing it on all my mechs now. And then this one has a kink in it for trying to get into specific nooks and crannies. But yeah, sponging technique, it's actually looks really good on battle mechs because of the scale of them, because of how small they are. It actually looks decent. But I'm on a tangent yet again. I was trying to tell you I paint up the bases in Vallejo colours. They're AK. Where is the paint gone? So this is the white that I have. Actually, this white's not that bad. Actually, it's pretty good. But I'm looking for the green. There we go. Look, there's the green. So basically, I bought like 3 colours. I normally I use Vallejo, but the modelling shop that I like to go into, Mark's Models, up on Hawkins Street. I like to go in there, and they have a whole stand of these paints. So I was like, right, my idea was I'll try and paint up some mechs before the tournament, and I'll do them in, you know, Irish colours like green, white, and orange to represent, you know, Ireland when I go to a tournament abroad or whatever. But I find the green's actually a pretty close match. This green, this light green, is a pretty close match to the neoprenes. So what I do is I do the base and I hit it with a light green, and then I hit it up with the Vallejo model wash. So they do a nice model wash here. I've got quite a few of them, and if I find the right one, I'll be bleeding laughing. But I hit it up with like a dark green model wash. I love these IKEA drawers in that they're super deep, but the problem is that they're super deep, so stuff kicks into the back of them. So I do the base coat of that, and then I just give it a model wash, and then it ends up looking like that. So it actually looks alright. I like it. I think it works for what it is. And then eventually, I went mad and I bought even more bits and pieces, because, you know, you can't go into a hobby shop and not buy bits and pieces. You know yourself. So we have like some woodland scenic bushes in dark green and medium green and light green. So we can put a few of them onto the base. And, you know, we'll varnish them beforehand. We have some varnish. And they'll look decent. I won't know myself, I won't. They'll be looking spick and span. You know? You can't go wrong. And I actually hit the miniatures, the infantry themselves, I do in Vallejo model colour, the US olive drab. So I'll do this for the base. I'll do the US drab. I'll pick out the other details after the fact. But I actually do the dark green wash on them as well. So I'll put these 2 base colours on, and then I'll hit a model wash with them. But we'll start with the base. It's all about the base. Simcross said, yeah, I saw some folks recently saying that the washes have changed with the new wave of contrast, or not as good as they were. I mean, some of the contrasts were really good, Steve, but I found that my initial impression on the line was that they were inconsistent, if you get me. You know what I mean? Like, your expectations, if you found one that you really liked, then your expectations of other colours would be based on that experience. And I found with contrast that it was inconsistent. You know what I mean? Like, some of them would be really super pigmented, and then other ones wouldn't be. So it was a bit odd in that regard, if you get me. Apparently we're getting Inner Sphere standard battle armor in the next Kickstarter, says Lorcan. Woo! Hobby gets here. What's the story, Dim? I'm on Scrabman's Patreon. They shot off a standard BA there. Ooh, battle armor. Very nice. Did you hear about the teasers Randall dropped on the Leviathan's AMA yesterday? No, I didn't, Lorcan. What was it? Blah, yeah, blah. Covers it. Still alive. Good, man. Good to hear you're still alive. It's always a net positive. Still in one piece. Still playing Valheim. Still building ridiculously sized gatehouses in my game. But sure, some things never change them, you know what I mean? If anyone doesn't quite get the reference, I do play Valheim, which is sort of like Minecraft Vikings, you know what I mean? Something like that. Valheim. It's a good bit of crack. And Dim is he's like an obsessed builder. He just gets an idea in his head, and he's like, "Oh, I'm building a gatehouse." It's like, all right, you just leave him to it, you know. And a half an hour later, there's this massive gatehouse leading in. But sure, it's well defended now. You know yourself. Stephen Cross question: do you have any experience or heard anything about those self-contained airbrushes, the ones with the compressors in the handles? Ooh, no, I don't. If that's if you're asking me specifically, I don't have any experience with the ones with the self-contained airbrushes. No, the only thing I've mucked around with is sort of the inline moisture traps in the handles. I haven't mucked around with the ones. What is it? The compressors in the handle of it, is it? That sounds a bit funky. Might be interesting. I would think any compressor that doesn't really have, that isn't attached to an air tank, would probably burn itself out pretty quickly, though. Like, I don't know how that's going to work pressure wise, but I haven't got my hands on one, but that's just my immediate thought process. What were they saying? Lorcan is saying the previously unveiled mech that's going to be in the Kickstarter is the Spectre, and they're going to be selling a box of 12 Orbeez at GenCon. I'm very jealous. I'd love to get a box of 12 Orbeez myself. I would totally buy them. Hobby centers are there to absorb money. Yeah, that is their thing. There is that hobby store near you, Tim, that we go into, and it's just like I can't not go in and not, you know what I mean? I just can't not spend money. There's something there, no matter what. Like what did I buy the last time? It was like an aluminium jig for sawing specific angles, like 45-degree angles. And I bought it for like Plasticraic, and I still haven't used it. In fact, I don't even know what it is anymore. But one day, maybe one day, the day will come up and I'll need to, cut an exact 45-degree angle, and I'll be like, that tool I bought 12 years ago, where is it? First of all, and then, ta-da, get some use out of it. But like I said, don't be worrying about the tone of this green. It's very bright. We'll be putting a wash on it. It will be toned down with the Owl model wash, so it will. And then we'll give them a varnish when they're all done, and we'll put some clump foliage on it, and they'll look massive. They'll look beautiful. Gitman saying you can actually go into a hobby shop and not buy anything. The key is not having any money like me. See, this is what happens when you get a job and responsibilities, and your time is taken up by, said responsibilities, family members, etc. You end up having a bit of disposable income, but you tend not to have as much time. So it is the dichotomy, I suppose, if that is even the right term, of being a hobbyist. That when you're younger, you have all the time and none of the money, but when you're old enough to buy all the toys, you might have a lot more money, but not all of the time. So it's the way of it, I'm afraid. It's all ahead of you, Jude. I really maybe could have done with backfilling these bases again. I find that with the Vallejo rough white pumice, there is a little bit of shrinkage with it. Just a tiny weeny bit, depending on how deep you fill. I've noticed there's just a little bit of shrinkage. Not a lot. If you're just doing it on like a flat surface, it seems to be grand, but there is a little tiny bit of shrinkage I'm noticing on these bases. Jesus, it's bright green it is. Holy. See that from space they can. Stephen Cross, oh well, the Spectre's a nice mech. I really hope to do the Berserker. The old model and the art are terrible. There are see that I think that was the thing that kept me away from Battletech for a long time. I knew about it in like the early 2000s, but a lot of the old mechs, let's be honest, were skew if to say the best. Now don't get me wrong, not all of the old mechs are terrible. Like I like some of the old mechs. They have a bit of character to them. Like I like the Crab. I like the old Crab. I like the old Trebuchet, and I like the old Hunchback. There's a few of them that look good, and then there's some of them that are just shocking looking, just absolutely shocking looking. Like the old Stalker, for instance. Jesus, that was terrible looking. That was. I wasn't a fan of the old Crusader. There's quite a lot of the old sculpts like that. Just like I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe it was because of the aesthetic shift, but I don't even think it's that, because some of the mechs are like sculpts from the 80s, and I actually really like the look of them. And then other sculpts are from the same sort of era or even in the 90s, and I'm just like, ugh. Like somebody battered it with the ugly stick, like holy Jesus. Winning no prizes at the beauty pageant, they wouldn't be. Great Primer saying, I'm a huge fan of AK Interactive's intense range. They need very little shaking, have incredible pigmentation that can be tint to a ridiculous degree. Yeah, I have to agree with you there, Nick. They're very good paints. Like even the white's really good. I was very surprised. Normally I have some issues with whites on different paint ranges, but I have to say that you know, it's their AK Intense range is really good, man. I have nothing negative to say about it. And now what can I say? And I've also been eyeing up those USB zero charge compressors recently. Might pick one up next week when I get some cash. Ooh. Nick was saying he ordered some of the new GSW dipping inks. I'll give them a test and let you know. Oh yeah, sweet. Green Stuff World dipping inks. I find out with Green Stuff World, they seem to come out with a lot of stuff. And some of it is great. But some of it's absolutely bleeding terrible. Like they seem to be very sort of experimental with products. But I like it. Like I've got a light box that I've got. That's a Green Stuff World one. I bought the sponging sticks off of Green Stuff World, and I wouldn't be bothered with it, to be honest with you. They're not. There's no point. Just get yourself these. Like you have way better control, and like I just found, for what I wanted them for, that they weren't the sponging sticks. You couldn't get the control with them. You know what I mean? I just as a product, they're a great concept, but the execution with them isn't. It's not great. That's all. You know what I mean? They're basically styrene tubes stuffed with like a square strip of sponge, but just the application of. I don't even have them to hand to criticize them, but trying to apply with them. Maybe they're in my tool drawer. And I shall have a quick rummage. Boom. There we go. Weathering sticks. I wouldn't be bothered with these. They seemed like an interesting idea, but yeah, it's like you'll do your weathering with that and then cut it off or tear it off and then pull more out. But I just found it wasn't great on the out control. You know what I mean? It just wasn't. It's not the best. There's a bit of movement in it, whereas I got smaller ones than this, obviously, but that was the biggest one. I wanted to try a few sizes and try them out. But I just find using like the sort of reverse locking tweezers just works so much better. It's just way better control. So if you're thinking about mucking around with sponge weathering, there you go. I actually contributed helpful stuff for once. Okay, saying I'm going to get my numbers going to go Mark's models yesterday and leave with nothing because they didn't have the particular size of styrene tube I wanted. Well, that if you're after a specific thing, this is true. Steam Cross is saying it's just that I'm thinking of getting an airbrush, but I've no experience with them, so I know they can be very expensive. Gravity fed double action, that's what you want. Orkin is saying you can get started with airbrush is very cheap. My current setup was €50. I'm not obviously worried about messing up. I never used one before. Probably need to sit down with someone and go help. Yeah, it helps if you have someone who's gone through it. But there's plenty of videos out there, Steve. There's some very informative videos regarding airbrushes and what to start with. I mean, ideally, I should be using an airbrush. I have like an extraction boot. I have a compressor. I have airbrushes, but I just haven't got the setup. You know what I mean? I don't have the space for the setup. So in order for me to do it, I'd have to set things up. I'd have to clear space and set up the hobby area for it and all this type of thing and then pack it away when I'm done, which I don't really have to worry about with brushes. I bought myself some of those drawers from IKEA and I originally put in nail varnish nail varnish shelves or acrylic shelves for nail varnishes on my desk just so I could have sort of quick access where I don't have to fully pack away projects, if you get me. because I find that's another barrier to motivation regarding painting for me, is the whole packing things up and then having to unpack them. You know what I mean? When you're not fully feeling it, that can sort of hinder things for me personally. Whereas if things are just to hand, like if I just pull the top drawer of my hobby desk now, it's like it's paints, it's like mechs that need painting. It's, you know what I mean? It's all the paints that I'm currently using. Let's see if I can show you. Hold on. So over here is like just, it's a bit blurred, but this is like in our Spear mechs, Clan mechs, current GW paints I'm using, plastics, all the current paints that I'm using to hand. And then like the next drawer down is like, loads of contrast paints and paintbrushes, and there's like a whole drawer of GW paints. So having something set up like that, which I know not everyone's going to be able to have, but having something set up like that really sort of helps. And then, like I said, over here I've got like this shelf on my desk, which is for nail varnish, this sort of acrylic shelf. And being able to leave current projects up really sort of helps in that regard. You would think I paint all the time, but I don't. But I'm lazy, so I'm sort of trying to cater for that laziness, or work around that laziness or lack of motivation I do have with hobby. But when I get motivated, it's like, I'm trying to make the setup as convenient for myself as possible, which kind of helps. Let's talk and say, get a decent compressor and a bunch of cheap ass bootleg brushes. It doesn't matter if you kill one, as long as you have gravity fed brushes, you'll be grand. Suction fed or less. Yeah, gravity fed, definitely. Gravity fed double action, go for that. And find someone who can 3D print mechs in Ireland. Well, I'm sure somebody can. There's 3D printers knocking around. I'm sure somebody knows somebody. Stephen is saying, had the old stalker, aka the dildo strapped to the box, or a sub ramped through a building. Yeah, man, it had questionable aesthetics, to say the least. It really did. It did not look the Mae West at all. I was not a fan. And then it had like big sort of horseshoe feet as well. It is toasty in this room at the moment. My God, this computer generates a fair bit of heat. I'm having to keep doors closed so I don't get too much sound coming into the hobby hangout. It does not help. The paints are actually drying pretty quick. But yeah, those AK Interactive acrylics, the intense acrylics, they're really nice. They're really, really nice, actually. I'm surprised. I was expecting them to be skew-if. Like, I've tried Army Painter and I'm not, you know what I mean? They separate quite a lot and stuff. But those AK Intense paints are very nice. Lorcan, tool drawer. Grow up, Lorcan. Man, hey, wait, I thought I was a person who was supposed to not be helpful with advice given. That, it all depends. There seems to be a bit of hobby arms race happening in Spain between Ammo and MiG, Greenstone World and AK Interactive. There's lots of innovation happening, and if the end products can be a bit meh at times, or they can be a bit meh at times. Yeah, that's the impression I get, Nick. But I don't mind, because it's like a lot of stuff is being thrown at the wall. Not everything's going to stick, but not everything's going to be a hit. Like, but the stuff that does stick and is useful, then, in my eyes, that's a good sort of business practice. If it works, it'll stick around. If it doesn't work, it won't. You know what I mean? Yeah, and then we live in the times of like YouTube reviews. So before you buy anything, we do live in the time of YouTube review of hobby. So you don't even have to buy it yourself to see if it's good. You just look it up, see who's bought it already, see what their impressions of it are, and their use of it. But more importantly, like, you're taking it. Like, so just because somebody advises that they like something in a review video doesn't mean that I will too. Do you get me? I sort of, if they give you sort of an honest look at how they're using it and the effects that they get with it, then you're able to sort of gauge yourself, which, you know, I think the majority of people are that way. You know what I mean? They want to give you an honest review of things, but it all depends. I suppose when people start getting paid to do reviews and such, it's a bit more, you know, a bit more cloak and dagger. But sure, I haven't experienced anything like that myself, so I can't really say much in that regard, to be honest with you. And there's no chance of anyone paying me to do a bleeding review, I can tell you that much, lads. Get hobby tip: man up and go to the makeup section. Files and makeup brushes are decent tools to have. Listen, like, when you're looking at the weathering sets from Mig or Tamiya, and it's literally, it looks like a makeup palette. It'll be like your dark browns up to your light oranges, and there'll be a little makeup brush, and it literally looks like the sort of makeup blush palette that the missus will use for her eyeshadow or whatever. It literally looks the same, just with hobby branding and different colours. You know? So it's, you know, people going into the makeup section to get decent brushes for weathering. I've heard you can actually get really decent dry brushes and stuff that they use for blushers or whatever else. But it depends. Like, from what my sister was telling me, some of the makeup brushes, like, holy Jesus, you thought paintbrushes were expensive for the hobby. Like, yeah, that's a whole other level. Tom is saying the hobby zone setups are well worth it if you paint a lot. I'd say so. I'd definitely say so. If you're painting day in and day out, you definitely don't want to be packing stuff up. I go through phases of creativity, and stick with it for a while. You know what I mean? Like, I'm enjoying the game, so we'll see what I manage to get painted up. And like I was saying earlier, because it doesn't take a lot of miniatures to paint up a force for Battletech, I'm happy enough. You're making up a force, and then a force of 4 mix, and it's like, all right, grand, you know, I'll try and get that painted up. You know what I mean? I'm still not the best at being consistent and getting everything painted up, but the threshold is a lot lower. You know what I mean? I'm not staring on the gun barrel of 180 miniatures or something like that for a 2,000 point army. I'm looking at 4mix, so there's less of an excuse for myself personally. You know, it's like, at least get some paste coats on it, paint some metal. You know what I mean? Like, my urban lance, I still need to do the urban an urban camo on them, and quite a lot of people told me to do, I think it was the Ryan Army, is it? It's like the British Ryan Army during the Cold War used sort of an urban camo that had like various squares of colour on it between greys and browns and such, and it actually looks pretty good. So I need to experiment with that, get the old mask and tape out, and crack on and get some of that painted up, and pick out the people who advised for that paint scheme. I did say I would name the pilots of the mechs after them, so I'll do that. I think I'll paint them up on that sort of colour scheme. I mean, I could go totally crazy, you know, and I'm going for you know, legitimate colour schemes, and see if there's somebody who does some Mountbatten pink or whatever, and the upper lance and Mountbatten pink, or dazzle camo as well. That was a thing. Having a dropship painted up in dazzle camo, that'd be sweet if you ever get to that stage. It would look crazy, but fun. And then get these painted up. I reckon I'll actually get most of these painted tonight. Most of the bases anyway. If you're new to me hobby streams, you'll find that I don't really do high detail work when I'm doing the streams. I tend to do the bulk sort of painting, because personally I find that if you're concentrating hard on trying to get fine detail done, your brain sort of goes into this tunnel vision. Do you know when you're trying to concentrate on something really, really hard and someone's trying to talk to you at the same time, and it's like, either I can concentrate on this thing or you can shut up and give me like 2 minutes. but it's like either or. It's not both, you know, if you're really focused on something. And this brush I've had this brush for years, this Wargamer Monster brush from Army Painter. It's got a hook at the end of it, so it's probably at near the end of its service, so I'm not too worried about painting the basing material, which is a bit coarse with it. But you really don't want to be painting like if you glue, like for my 40k orcs, I tend to paint like I do it old school. I do a sand base for them, so I do sand and then I'll do like loose gravel and stuff. But like painting that up with a paintbrush, you're pretty much painting like sandpaper. You know what I mean? So it's gonna kill the brush. So I would advise, if you're doing any basing like this for the first time, to use your worst brush or cheapest brush that you don't really care about. You know, because it's gonna die a death. Gitman is saying you lack of motivation because you don't have Steve-O ripping the piss out of you to get stuff painted. Yeah, that's true. I don't have Steve-O taking the piss out of me because nothing's painted up. I should really have like a motivational poster of Steve-O over the hobby desk, you know, being a smug git or something, standing in front of his fully painted 2000 point Battlemoon army. You know what I mean? Just to sort of prove the point. Get that competition between war bosses going, you know. And crack the whip. Get painting. What's the Lorcan saying? I need to figure out the next painting project. I'm leaning towards Tamar Jaegers. So I need to pick out like 12 mechs and decide if I want to dip them in a pile of metal vehicles. Into the pile of metal vehicles for them. Oh, you want to dip into the pile of metal vehicles? Well, okay. I didn't make it a 45 but growing up. Well, you grew, just, you know, not maturity. Yes, British Army on the Rhine. That's the one. See, I know stuff, but I know I didn't like broad strokes of vagueness. I'm like, I kind of know stuff. You know what I mean? My brain tends to gloss over stuff. It's like I kind of know bits and pieces, but I don't know details. Like, I'm terrible with dates. About like specific events. There's a few of them that will stick in my head, like D-Day being like the 6th of June and stuff like that, but the majority of them I'll have a vague idea of when it happened historically. Roughly, you know what I mean? Don't go quoting me now. But yeah, I'm looking forward to having this force painted up. I think... Is the primer dried on this one? I think it is. I'm looking forward to having these guys painted up. I'll leave that a little while longer to dry. I think the black isn't quite dry on it. Because I haven't actually used infantry in a game yet. I've been introduced to Battletech by a friend, Brian, and I said to him at the time, listen, I'll start playing Battletech, but my stipulation with him was, you need to teach me. I wanted to learn how to use everything. So we literally went through all the unit types, and I said that to him. It's like, I want to learn how to use vehicles, infantry, aircraft, artillery, the whole shebang, like, when I decided to get into Battletech. Because for me, it's not just about the mechs. Obviously, like, the mechs are a key and, you know, main part of the game and draw to the game for people. But for me, the thing that sort of really does it is the combined arms aspect of the game. You know what I mean? Like, it's in my eyes, it's a combined arms game. So, you know, you can have your infantry and your air force and your big stompy mechs as well, which kind of helps. And duke it out, like, you know what I mean? And have your dropships coming in, and it's got a pretty comprehensive rule set. I like the rule set. There's a lot in the rule set. So, you know, you can jump into space and have your little space battle and go land on the planet and fight your way in there as well. You know what I mean? That's something I always wanted to do with 40k, but it wasn't really facilitated for that sort of style of campaign play. That's how I ended up with like a battle fleet gothic fleet for my orcs, was that I wanted to jump into a system and fight a space battle and then like assault the planet and play planet strike games and, you know, go onto the planet and play that out. You know what I mean? But I just never got around to it. I don't know. It wasn't catered for as much as it is for in Battletech. So I suppose the entry to sort of do that sort of stuff is a bit harder. You need to do a bit more lifting yourself. Whereas in regards to Battletech, like, boy Jesus, they've rules for everything. But like just rules for, like, you know, to help you generate planets and to generate units. You know what I mean? Looking at campaign operations. So, you, like, literally, if you were to do a campaign game, right? So, say, for instance, I was going to run a campaign game with someone. You can generate different contracts for them to play on. But, like, say the player picks a contract, then I'll turn around and I'll go, right, okay, well, it's a planet out in the periphery. I'm going to make a planet. So then, you know, there's rules for generating a planet. And then it's like, you know, what forces are going to be on the planet? It's out in the periphery. What era are we playing in? Like, how much, you know, you'll roll to see how much money they'd have, depending on what faction they are. So, you know, there's multipliers and divisions. So, like, if they're pirates, you know, things are going to be a bit harder for them. Whereas if they're sort of part of a periphery nation or whatever else, you know, there might be a multiplier depending on the era and such. So you'll be able to build up a force. So you could build up like a planetary defense force because it's like, hey, we have this budget. And, you know, my thinking on these sort of things is, if it's common as muck and easy to get replacement parts for and easy to rearm, that's what we're buying. Like, my thinking as a commander in Battletech is like, that's what it is. It's like, I don't go exotic. If we get some exotic tech as salvage, like if I'm running a mercenary unit and, you know, we get some exotic tech as salvage, it's like that stuff's getting flipped and we're buying 2 bog standard mechs out of the proceeds. Like, because if you're playing on campaigns and you get like super advanced tech and, you know, it gets destroyed, good luck to trying to replace it. You know what I mean? Whereas if it's common enough and easy enough to repair and replace, at least you'll have a few bits and pieces knocking around. Going Gates is saying it might be me painting pragmatic or my Dutch side, me being cheap, is coming out. But once a brush is getting to the end of its life, I use it for washing, for shading. Yeah, I can get that, yeah. I can understand using it for washes and shades. You can still get life out of them once they start splaying. You could dry brush with them. Shades, as you were saying. Painting bases. Use them for putting the PVA glue on bases as such. Or like getting the ground texture. Like this is the one I think I used for ground texture mix. It's like an old Winsor & Newton round special value. Ooh. And yeah, this thing's like knackered. This is used to literally scoop the ground texture out of the jar and just put on the bases, and it works and it does the job and it's happy enough. You know what I mean? It just depends. Like, you can just buy like cheap dry brushes or basin brushes. I used this for terrain. I bought it in Eason's, which is like a newsagent's type store, and it was cheap enough. Mind you, it's Easton, so nothing's exactly cheap in the place. And then there's other brushes you'll have where there's like, you know, I got like Artis Opus series brushes. I don't really like these. They're supposed to be sable brushes, but I don't like them. They splayed very easy on me. I thought they were terrible. And then, like, probably the most swankiest brushes that I own that are actually really nice are these ones here. They're sort of broken-toed miniature ones, Kalinsky Sable. I don't really use these that much. Like, I'd crack them out for something like if I was doing painting for a competition or whatever. But these were really nice. These ones were. But like the last few brushes I bought were like all Humbrol and fucking, what are they? Yeah, like a load of Humbrol brushes, flat brushes, and then I bought like cheapo ones from China. Like that's not being used yet, but look at the bleeding head in it. It's not exactly amazing. This one's grand, flat brushes, like just whatever, cheap, expensive, whatever works for you. Knock yourself out. Like don't be only buying one thing because someone's saying these brushes are the best. Blah blah blah. It's like go with whatever works for you. Like I said, I think I've had this brush for I don't know, since 2010 or something like that. Maybe older, 2008. And it's still throwing paint on miniatures, so it's grand. No complaints here. I mean, if that's not getting your money's worth, I don't know what is. What can I say? There are rules to allow for a game where you can have wet navy battleships with mechs jumping between them to fight during a rain of frogs. True. I mean, the unit creation rules are pretty cool, man. Like the examples they give you, you can make you could make a world where it's like islands, in the sky or whatever, giant rock outcrops, and their economy is based off of airships or whatever. That's their main means of transport is zeppelins. And then you can design your own vehicles as well. There's rules for designing your own vehicles. It's mad. It's absolutely mad. I love it. It's great. And these paints are actually pretty great too, I have to say. But there's no fear of me getting a sponsorship off of anyone, so if I'm telling you it's decent, it's because I've bought it and I like it. Unless it comes to that pink stuff, don't buy that pink stuff for stripping miniatures, don't. It's bad for that. I'm only human, I get it wrong sometimes. I basically, the best way to do it is like, learn through my mistakes. There you go, that's the best way to go about it. Don't take my advice, it's just like, don't do what I do when I screw things up. There you go, what more could you ask for? Gitman, I mostly use Citadel and Army Painter because I'm familiar with those products and because I love a lot of the paints. Yeah, that's cool, man. If you're familiar with a range, then go with that. Like whatever is happiest. For me, Army Painter like splits too much, and GW paint pots I hate. I like their paints. The paints are nice. They're a bit overpriced for me. I just don't like the paint pots. They just dry out like. If they went to dropper bottles with them, I think it'd be great. And then other people would be like, no, dropper bottles are the devil. You know what I mean? It's just, we all have our own sort of habits when it comes to painting. And what we like and what we don't like. And thankfully, in this sort of age we live in with the hobby, there's a wide selection of product to pick from. So you don't have to be tied into one product line or another in regards to paint. Like if you really like the metals from one product line, and then you like, certain paints from another, it's like mix and match, whatever works for you. Experiment, find out. Like, definitely find out what you like yourself. See what way it goes. Orkin, don't deal with Dwayne, don't do those. Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. Don't deal with what I does. Jesus, jackass. Yeah. Never thought I'd get a jackass reference in the streams. Great primer. I don't accept any products for review if they give me helpful suggestions of what to say in my content. Yeah, definitely. Model for advantage. Kaiser Vallejo all the way. Dropper bottles are a massive range of the military shades and historical minis. Oh, totally. Like, if you're going historical, and I seem to be leaning that way with the way I paint miniatures, like their model color line is cracking. They've their game color line as well. Yeah, Vallejo's pretty good. If you can get your hands on it, Vallejo's pretty good. I'm trying to see if I can sort out getting Vallejo paint in for when I do set up the web store for the channel. I would like to sell Vallejo paints, but you know, we'll see what happens. One step at a time. But mind you, these AK paints are pretty nice too. They're very nice indeed. Hopefully they do more production runs of the mix. That's the only thing that's sort of slowing things down at the moment. It's the fact that they're getting stuff produced in China by the time it gets produced and shipped, and you know, they're still dealing with the plague in a very odd way in Asia. So it's I still think they're going through rolling lockdowns from what I understand, but I don't know. I won't really speak on the matter. I'm not too informed. But it is what it is. We live in an era now where things are not on demand, you know, they're not always there straight away when you want them. Production lines did get disrupted, and you know, the price of shipping going sky high and the price of stuff going sky high, you know, it's sort of slowed things down a bit in the hobby. Great Primer saying, Vallejo for me too. Most of my acrylics, AK and ammo for enamels. See, I don't even touch enamels really. I just stick with acrylic. Green Stuff Oil for gore and puke, AK for terrain. I do muck around with this stuff for AK, I have to say. I do love it. Their Rust Primer. When I was doing the Games Workshop terrain, this stuff is brilliant. I love stippling this on, because it's like a lighter tone and then it dries a bit grey, bit darker. But I found if I put it over black, if I stipple it on in various layers, I don't even have a piece of terrain to hand to actually show you guys as an example. But it's a great rust. If you stipple it on over the black, it's an absolutely cracking rust. And then I usually hit it with the rust colour model wash, and it looks great. Do a dry brush of metal on the edges, and it's amazing. Modeling for the fans is saying, I think they're Spanish, right? So you probably find it easier to get them than the UK these days. Yes, Kaiser, they are indeed Spanish. So it should be easier to get a hold of, you're right, than in the UK at the moment. Hopefully things will change in that regard for you guys in the future, but onwards and upwards. But yes, I shall get on to the distributor in Ireland and see about getting them. Because I do like their paint sets are pretty good. I mean, they're not cheap, but you know, the amount of paints you're getting. But I do like their mega paint sets. The cases they come in are pretty handy as well. But I'm a fan of their paints. I do like Vallejo's paints. Their paint lines, their game colours, their model colour lines. Their extra opaque line is really nice as well. I like that. I do like their extra opaques. They're like the old foundation paints that GW used to do. So there's extra pigment in them. So the coverage on them is great, like absolutely great coverage. Obviously extra pigment on your paintbrushes isn't going to be great if you're letting it get too far up the barrel, but cracking. Apparently Underground Games and Tala has Vallejo stuff in stock too, or is it Underworld? Those guys. Underworld, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, it depends. Like some people will stock them and other people won't. Like I know, if we're talking about who does paints in the city centre, so like Underworld Game and they're out in Tala, they do Vallejo paints. You have the model shop on Capel Street had a rack of Vallejo paints as well the last time I was in there, but point you, that was a few years ago, going back now. Mark's Models do AK Interactive, they're intense, and they do Revell and Humbrol paints. Is it? Or Tamiya? I think they have Tamiya. They have a few. They have quite a few different like weathering sets there, so they're geared more towards model stuff, but they don't have Vallejo, which I'm surprised by, to be honest. Which I'm surprised they don't have Vallejo, but they have a good selection with AK anyway for the acrylics. And then what else is there? Gamers World up on Jervis Street. They were doing Vallejo paints, but they don't seem to be restocking them anymore. But they've a load of Army Painter paints. And then they sell Games Workshop paints as well. And then you have the Games Workshop itself on Lower Liffey Street, and that does Games Workshop paints too. And I'm sure there's other places that I either haven't frequented or don't know about yet that do other painting lines. But yeah, you can, like, depending on what painting line you're into, you can get your hands on it. Vallejo seems to be the hardest one to get your hands on at the moment. But like Lorcan was saying, you can get it out in Tala. Which is a bit of a journey for some, but you know, can work for others. And yeah, we've got a varied selection and choice. Well, for the advantage, you love the Irish Brigade colour scheme you're running there, by the way. It looks great. Thanks, bud. Yeah, it's like I said, it was just a tournament colour scheme that I came up with, kind of little bit like House Davian. I like that the red and white stripe that they do for the House Davian units, but this one is orange and white, and it looks good. I might even do a little bit more, but I haven't quite finished with it. But I like how it looks anyway. Nick is saying Air Hobbies has the most comprehensive range of paints in Ireland, so they'd be a good reference point for prices. Ooh, yes. I keep forgetting about Air Hobbies. Do you know that? I think it's because like I work in the city centre, and I just go on a stroll on my breaks, and you know, I spend a small fortune going into coffee shops and buying books on World War II tanks, or you know what I mean, or I buy fishing gear for going fishing, or I go into hobby stores and I buy hobby bits and pieces, or even if I go into gaming stores, if it's not for me, you know, I'll buy like a booster pack or something like that for my nephew. He likes Pokemon. When you're there, about £5 a pop, man. They're not cheap. You know what I mean? I would have thought they'd be about £3, but they're like, I think they're about £5 a pack for like Pokemon booster cards. I was like, Jesus, the price for 10 cards. But you know, whatever. That's the hobby it is. I'm not really into collectible card games myself, but the nephew's into them. He loves them. His communion, it was not too long ago, and I bought him a binder to put all his cards in, and he was in his bleeding element, he was. Bless him. Dan Booman's here. What up, Dan? What's the crack? How are you keeping, bud? I see I've acquired a Y in my name. There's no Y in my name, but thanks for the addition. Norkenagel, I haven't seen the model shop open in a long time. Yeah, me too. Like I haven't seen it open in a long time either. I wonder if it's gone. Like, I really haven't seen it open in a very long time. And I do walk up there because I do go up Capel Street. So it's on Capel Street towards the River Liffey. And I do walk up that way because I do pop into Army Bargains now and then. There's a pair of hunting gloves that I want to get for my brother for kind of like fingerless neoprene hunting gloves. They're great for fishing in the winter time. I have a pair for myself, and I bought them there a good while ago. So I'm trying to get the brother a pair for next winter. We tend to do a bit of night fishing in winter. Bit of beach fishing. There's quite a few beaches up and around the coast here. Even in Dublin, yeah, you'll even catch something up in Dublin. But yeah, up in Capel Street, like there's a few stores I go into. But I never see it open anymore, actually, which is surprising. Yeah, I haven't been in it in a long time, a very long time. I wonder if if it's shut shop for good, or Wonder what's going on there. Nick is saying Air Hobbies has pretty much everything. Vallejo, Scale 75, AP, Citadel, P3, Amex. Well worth checking out the store online and in real life. I've never been down there in real life. Are they based down in Bray, are they? Are they the crowd who are based in Bray? In the south Dublin? I mean, that actually wouldn't be a bad idea for like for a video, to do like a tour of the hobby stores. Obviously needing permission off of people beforehand. A tour of the hobby stores and where you could get miniatures and hobby paints in Dublin. That's not a bad idea, that. Feel free to steal it, Nick. Just to show people where stuff is, like. And then to reminisce and look back on, you know, years from now. Jesus, do you remember when they were there? You know? That sort of thing. But yeah, I've never been to their store, if they're the ones in Bray. Dundalk. Ah, okay. The Irish Brigade was also a well-known regiment in the American Civil War, and they were the best examples of the Civil War, where it was brother against brother, since they were on both sides of the conflict. This is true, Jude. The Irish were on both sides of the American Civil War conflict. You're right there, bud. We could collab. Yeah, I'll hold the camera for you, Nick. Totally doable. Dundalk, you're out in Dundalk, are you? No, I can't say I've been out to them then. If I'm being honest, I cannot say I've been out that way. Totally doable though. But yeah, there's a varied selection both online and IRL, which is good compared to years ago when the pickings were slim. You know, it's good to see that the hobby is healthy in this city. I suppose, yeah, being based out in Dundalk, isn't there is it Dundalk that no, I'm thinking of Minute. No. Yeah, never mind me. My brain is thinking of two separate places. Lorcan is saying there's also the model shop opposite the main entrances of James's Hospital. There's a model shop up by James's Hospital. Is there? Is that the one? I know there's sort of like this weird model shop up near Mount Brown, heading out past I think it is James's Street, but it's not like a typical store. It's kind of like a car boot sale in a store, really. Like, it's all mixed and stacked and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's yeah. That's the best way to describe that store up there. And I mean, it's great to have a rummage around. It's really interesting to see all different bits and pieces. But the best way I could describe it is like it's basically like a car boot sale in a store. It's just mad. But you can go in and have a look. Like, you can find all bits and pieces. Like, when I went in there first, I found some Battletech bits and pieces. I found a few blister packs. I think he must buy and sell miniatures off of people. So I grabbed some off of him. But there was also other bits and pieces there. Like, there was like bits and pieces for kits. Like, I know with the scale model guys, they tend to buy additional parts. So like, if they buy a kit, say it's off of, I don't know, Dragon or Tamiya, and then they'll buy like photo etched parts as additional parts. Like, it's got a load of stuff like that as well. And I specifically remember seeing, I think there were like plastic Panther tag tracks, and being tempted. I was like, ooh, that'd be great for doing a little wagon or a little vehicle of some sort. You know what I mean? A few plastic tracks. I'm going to say, yeah, someone's holding a big collection of Battletech bits. The shop is full of stuff. Is that the same shop? Are we talking about the same shop? Or are you talking about somewhere else as well? And yeah, that's a bit of a fair walk up. Like that's up past Houston Station there, up past the train station. It's a fair old walk up to it. I know, because I did it after work one day. I was like, sure, it's only 10 minutes away. It's not only 10 minutes away. It's a bit of a walk. I think me blisters on my feet had blisters by the end of it. But it was great. It wasn't too bad. They used to be on Blessington Street, which was much easier to get to. True. Like, I remember when Gamers World used to be up on... Oh, Jesus. What's the name of it? It's not Dawson Street. What's the name of the street? Up past Parnell Square, anyway. Or up past Parnell Street. If you go up Parnell Street, there's a... Up past there, I remember that, when it was Models Inc. And you had the musty basement. All the historical gamers used to play down there. Great crack it was. Be easier to get to Lewis than James's and then walk over. Yeah, well then, yeah, if it's that place in James's, then we're thinking of the same place. I'm actually going to start on the US Olive Drab. I've got the base coat done on the bases. Well, Jesus, the lighting isn't great there. Maybe if I shift the light over, you might be able to see a bit better. So I've got like the base coats done on the bases, and I'm going to start putting the US Olive Drab on them boils there. So I think these ones have got the US Olive Drab on them already. I could probably do with a touch up, and these have been washed as well. So I'll redo them as well. I'll do the US Olive Drab, and then I'll come in with that Vallejo model wash over everything. And then after that, I'll come in and pick out the details of the guns in metal. And I know, realistically, like, the guns would be blackened. They wouldn't be, like, super shiny metal. But it's sort of... I'm taking into account that they're 6mm figures. And in order for you to see detail on them, or see that they actually have weapons, they kind of have to pop. You know what I mean? So you can realise from the distance, oh yeah, these dudes are carrying weapons or whatever. Or, you know... their visors are in gold, so it pops a bit, so you can see from a distance. You know what I mean? Because you have to take into account we are painting miniatures, and these ones are super small. It was Dorset Street, was it? Do I use magnifying specs for these, or just me eyes? Just me eyes. Just the old Mark 1 eyeball. It doesn't seem like too much of a strain on my eyes. I haven't had too much issue. I don't know if you guys can see, like, can you see the visors are in gold and their faces are like flesh coloured, and I pick out their weapons? If you get me. I mean, you can't really see from above, but like when you look face onto them, or I suppose if you're facing them, you'll see like the little gold visors and stuff. That's the way they'll be eventually. But yeah, they paint up quick enough, to be honest with you. I'm quite happy. You know, it doesn't take quite a lot of paint to get a decent result with them. Use the GW method and paint the weapon furniture red. Well, yeah. See those bright red guns over there? It's like, well, how could I not see them? Yeah, God, that reminds me. GW and the red era back in the day. Do you remember Chaos Knights with lances that were like fucking like that colour red, pretty much? You know, fun times. I have to say though, like, they did look good. Quite a lot of the paint jobs did look decent, but there was nearly a bit of red in everything in the red era. That would have been, what, the 90s? I think it was the 90s, wasn't it? It'd be interesting to use that sort of old retro colour scheme on new miniatures for Games Workshop. Or maybe a fun thought experiment or something like that. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, I think. Just so I have better control. But I'll use a bigger brush to... use that monster brush to mix the paint. And get it to the consistency that I want. And we shall see if this is too... That's a bit small. That one. Ah, yeah, you'll do. I'll give it a bash. I have to say, originally when these Citadel handles came out, I was very skeptical of them. Very skeptical of them. But now that I have one, it's pretty handy. I think I ended up with one because I subscribed to the Warhammer Conquest, I think it was, the magazine subscription. And you ended up with one from there, so I technically bought it, if you get me. And yeah, no, I thought it was so good I bought a second one. I bought my brother one. And yeah, I like using it. Yeah, it's not bad at all. I think you can actually unscrew it and put that onto a tripod. There's like there's a screw in it. I think that's like a universal mount, so you could actually screw that onto a tripod or whatever if you wanted to. If you were that way inclined. Which I won't be able to screw it back on now. Ah, there you go. Grand. But yeah, like they've come out with some weird things as well. Like there's like this stick with a load of elastic bands for holding your miniatures in to spray them. I mean, I just use the old blue tack method. That works for me. Poster tack, poster putty, or whatever you want to call it. And generally use the lid off of an old biscuit tin or like a tin of sweets from Christmas, like Quality Street, because boy Jesus, I wouldn't buy roses. I wouldn't thank them for, you know, a tin of roses sweets. They're not the same anymore, you know what I mean? They've gone downhill. Look, I'm saying I use old paint pots and blue tack for painting handles. Yeah, that works as well, man. I used to do that a fair bit. If I've got quite a lot of miniatures on the go, I tend to do that because I've only got one of these paint handles. I don't really need to buy more of them. What I'll come back in and do is, after I've done this sort of green on them, I'll do the wash, and then I'll come back in with the black and I'll pick out their boots. Because I seem to have been a bit liberal with the old grass green with them. And I'll try and actually keep this in frame a bit more so you can see as well. That would help. Speaking of GW painting, Louise Sugden, one of their painters, has an incredible snakebite army. I stumbled onto it recently. It's one of the best thematic orc armies I've ever seen. Oh, very nice. I'll have to look it up. Is it on the Warhammer community side, is it? If so, I'll have to give that a looky loo. Give it a gander, see how it's looking. I do love a good orc army. It's one of the aspects that sort of drew me to orcs was, you know, paint scheme wise or even composition of the army with conversions and such. No two orc armies will really be the same. You know, I think that's kind of changing now where there's less conversion encouraged and such. But even with paint schemes, like you're gonna get a fair bit of variation. But yeah, I'll have to come back in with the black and pick out their boots and pick out their weapons before I come back in with the metal, the gun metals. Oop. You see, this is where things are a little bit problematic, but I seem to be working around it easily enough because these actually come on strips of 3 miniatures when you get them. And the first lot I painted up, I painted them on their strips before I put them on their bases. But like I said earlier in the stream, but I'll repeat if you weren't here, I actually found it a bit hard then because I'm putting 7 of them on each hex base. I found it hard to get the basing material down and then the paint on the basing material without clipping the miniatures. So I decided, you know, the best approach then at that point was to just paint the base and put the basing material on with the miniatures on and then do the miniatures afterwards. You know what I mean? So just sort of trial and error. And I knew it would make, you know, picking detail out a little bit harder. I don't need to worry about going too far down with the green on these. Like I said, I'll come back in and pick their boots out. I'll pick the boots out in black, or I might even pick the dark rubber, but probably black. And yeah, it seems easy enough to paint them up. Guess I'll buy you a tin of roses for Christmas since I hate you. Or as I'll put it, want to just mess around. Oh, yeah. I think the term you're looking for, Jude, is you enjoy winding me up. I mean, if you want to buy a tin of roses and ship them from the US to Ireland as a practical joke, I mean, you know, I won't stop you. I won't stop you. I'll just deal what I do with deodorant kits that I get off of people now at Christmas. You know, those sort of gift boxes that you get. I've finally wised up to what you do with them is you don't actually use them. You hold on to them to the next year and then you give them to other people. Boom, sorted. The Gitman, have you seen any other orc army that is blue and orange as their main paint scheme? I've seen orcs painted up with blue skin before. That's been good. So you found the army on Tumblr. She took it to an armies on parade. Oh, nice. Dwayne, you can give me the roses and keep the tin. See, the thing is, I don't even think it's a tin anymore with roses. I know you can buy. Most of them have switched to plastic now, which is weird because the tins were recyclable. You know what I mean? I just find that perplexing. I suppose we're starting to shift to the stage where we can start recycling more plastics, but ideally you don't want too much plastic in your fields. Like I've taken to drinking sparkling water a lot more now instead of fizzy drinks as much. Trying to cut down on it just from the sugar content, and quite a lot of the sparkling water bottles are telling you, you know, the bottle's 100% recycled. But even still, you don't really want to be consuming stuff out of plastic bottles. It's not great for you, you know. But then nearly everything we get is in plastic packaging these days. Sadly. But hopefully we'll shift away from it overall. Less plastics is a better thing. In fact, the last time I went out fishing, I didn't catch any fish, but that's what I pulled up quite a bit of. Because the waves were churning. There was, you know, random bits of plastic just I was pulling in. I think there was like a bit of a yellow sort of plastic, like a marigold rubber glove or something, and then just like plastic packaging. Because I go fishing in Dublin Bay. Us humans being the filthy beggars we are. But yeah, the more we can cut down on that, the better. Sparkling water, the notions on you. I do love a good sparkling water, you know. Can't knock it. Only Brexit shipping costs will stop you. This is true. Yeah. Dim with his terrible puns as always. Did you mean to paint that like an Irish flag or is that an air? Jesus. Nick is saying, I like that Sostrin grain sell water in boxes. Oh. I've seen that some companies have started to sell water in aluminium tins, which is cool as well. Well, obviously, you know, even steel with it, aluminium or aluminum to our American cousins. There's still a plastic lining on the inside of them, you know, which is crazy. We literally got plastic in everything, man. It's everywhere, man. Yeah, so I definitely give these a wash, because if you look at the tone difference in the US olive drab, but I must have clipped these guys with the brushes. Yeah, I clipped these with the basing material when I was putting it on. You know, if you're quick enough putting that ground effect on, so like say if you clip something with it, right, when you're putting the Vallejo ground effect on, if you have a wet brush and you're quick enough to go back in with the wet brush, you'll be able to lift it off. Or, you know, it's not the end of the world if you accidentally hit something with it, if you know what I mean. You can still rescue it. But yeah, that dust is still killing me. Thankfully, I don't suffer from hay fever. I don't know how people survive through the summer with hay fever, because holy Jesus. My younger brother has it. And he went through, like, I went to visit them. They live in the countryside, and he suffers terribly from hay fever. And they have these all-terrain vehicles, or quads as we call them. And he went driving through a field with it, and like straight away you could see that like his eyes were tearing up because of his hay fever. You know what I mean? So I can only imagine what it does to people during the summers. Lorcan, amusingly, Transformers have switched to minimal plastic packaging. It's mostly just toys securing the figures in the box, and some fans are really angry at that there's no plastic. And Gitman saying, as always, failed to catch the terrible pun. You'll get there in the end, Jude. It's probably better that you don't pick up on him. I noticed that Lorcan with the I'll Drink Lions, and they've done that. They used to have like a plastic packaging on the outside of them, of the cardboard box for the tea bags, and they've stopped doing that. Well, that's good. So I mean, like, there's a shift. You know, like Johnson's earbuds that they're pretty good for. In fact, I have some there. Johnson's baby cotton buds, as they call them, or I think the Americans call them Q-tips. They've shifted away from using plastic in these as well. Like, these are pretty good for the own hobby stuff. Like, if you want to put a wash on and then soak it up or whatever. But this part here used to be plastic. I mean, it kinks and it bends when you use it now, but it still functions, and it's all cardboard now, so it's... Yeah, look. Plastic-free, recyclable packaging. But that's good, you know. The less plastic we have knocking around, the better. Now, flock those bases from 6mm grass from some Geek Gaming Scenics. They're trooping through a wheat field. Well, I've clumps of foliage to do, so it'll be like bushes and stuff. But yeah, I've actually been very sort of... conscious of the scale that they're at, and trying to like put basing material on, while at the same time not make it look ridiculous. But then it's me being pedantic, because it's like, you know, I'm sure there are some alien worlds where there are like, you know, you can always just hand wave it away. It's like, oh, you know, that grass is out of scale for the miniatures. It's like, oh, they're on an alien world with like 8-foot tall grass or whatever. There's bamboo, or, you know what I mean? You don't have to nitpick, but it's just personal sort of aesthetics when it comes to that. But yeah, it's not too bad actually. I thought it'd be a lot harder to get into the guy right in the middle with the paintbrush, but it seems to be handy enough. There's enough space. Get the angles on him. We'll see what I'm saying in that regard when it comes to painting the boots. I mean, if I was tidy enough with putting the basing material on and the base coats, you know, their boots should still be black. They wear prime black. Ideally, they should still be black, but that would be in an ideal world, you know. Doesn't always happen that way. Bear with me a moment. Lorcan, yeah, they're angry that the smaller figures have an open window that used to have a clear plastic panel so that the toys could be touched in the box. Oh, okay. I mean, like, does anyone over the age of 12 actually, like, care? The claim it'll make it easier to steal or pull parts off, but I'm doubtful based on the few I've gotten since the changeover. And the bigger ones are in fully sealed cardboard boxes now. Oh, okay, so there's like... I get you. So some of the smaller ones are in the plastic or in the cardboard boxes, but there's windows that don't have plastic in them now, so you can touch the miniature. But then they're still tied into the box. So it's like, yeah, but that's like if a product's broken, you're not gonna buy it. If there's a piece missing off it, you're not gonna buy it either. Like, you know, like the amount of packaging that goes in some of the stuff is absolutely crazy. And it's just sort of thrown away. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're really crafty, you can make terrain out of stuff. You know what I mean? But let's be realistic. We don't all have space to be keeping like a small skip's worth of plastic that we use just in case we want to make a terrain project out of it eventually, and sort of upcycle it instead of recycling it. But yeah, sometimes some packaging can be a bit nuts. I mean, some people have done some very impressive things with recycled packaging for terrain projects, especially. You can get quite a lot. Or even cereal boxes. Jesus, you remember that back in the day when Games Workshop used to be like, you know, save your cereal boxes and make terrain out of it instead of just trying to sell it to you, you know? Gas. And you could tell it was from the 90s because it was like the 90s era packaging for like Kellogg's cornflakes and stuff. It's warm enough in this place at the moment, I can tell you, because the paint's drying. Paint's drying quick enough on the old pellet. Add a bit more water in. And hopefully not too much. And crack on. Yeah, absolutely. Flying through these guys. I'm flying through the time. It's nearly 11 o'clock already. What are we looking at? Like 6 minutes to 11? I suppose time flies when you're having fun. But decent progress as well. This is what I like about painting smaller scale miniatures and you know, less games with a smaller miniature count. It's when you do sit down to actually paint and put paints on miniatures, you actually feel like you're getting somewhere. You know what I mean? I'm not having to fight the green tide. Mind you, once the green tide's painted up, it looks very impressive. But I like that the progress that you get on painting smaller scales and such. And smaller miniature counts. It's refreshing. It's nice. You know what I mean? Especially since I've been painting like, well, I suppose 28mm heroic. They wouldn't be 28mm anymore. Old school GW stuff was 28mm, but sort of 28mm heroic stuff for so long. Lorcan is saying there's an old issue of White Dwarf that showed how to make a grav vehicle for 40k out of a deodorant bottle. Ah, yes, that's right. The old grav tank out of the roll-on deodorant stick. Jeez, I don't think I've used on a roll-on deodorant stick since I was 10. I just went to aerosols. You're a can of Lynx, you know? Jesus. Do you reckon most of Lynx customer bases are under the age of like 16 or something? They must be. They must be. I guess. Or Axe, as they're called in Germany. I always found that funny. Nick is saying I built my boat cabin out of a plastic fruit tub for that Orcs versus Shark diorama I made. Oh yeah. That was a really impressive diorama. You've done quite a few dioramas. You have a few bits and pieces. I suppose you've a new hobby cabin to put them in, so you're not stuck for space for the time being. But yeah, I don't think I've ever actually done a diorama. That's an interesting point right there. I've just realised I've never done like a purpose-built diorama at all. Has anyone else? I know, like Nick has, but am I the only one who's never done a diorama? Or have the rest of you had a crack at building dioramas? That'd be interesting to see. I suppose if you have like some spare miniatures, or if you want to make one yourself intentionally. Like, I could see using mechs, but having their bases as part of the basin of the diorama, so I could still take the miniatures out and use them for gaming purposes. But I've even that, I haven't even done that, to be honest with you. And then if you were to do a diorama, it's like, well, what would it be? I'd be like, maybe some mix. Lorcan is saying I use an airbrush to put on deodorant, of course. Of course. You're a man of high class, I see. Link's gift sets sell like gangbusters at Christmas. They do, man. It's like the gift you buy someone when you literally have no idea what else to get them. Lorcan is saying I did a Battletech diorama for GaleCon maybe 12 years ago now. Oh yeah, really? What was it? What did you do for the diorama? Like, was it like two mechs just killing each other, or? Judah saying I haven't found a reason to build a diorama. BC is saying they're called battlefields. They're dynamic dioramas. I suppose, yeah, with moving pieces. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I get you there. I see what you did there. Very crafty. But you get what I'm saying, like purpose-built dioramas, or is it vignettes? That sort of thing. I don't know. Maybe I've been reading too much Wargamers Illustrated, of late. Hence my sudden piqued interest in the Waterloo era, which had me worried for a while there. But it's okay. I think it's subsided for now. My desire to paint small scale miniatures is being is being fulfilled by Battletech. Battletech has yet again come and saved the day, thankfully. For a moment there, I thought I'd have to start building like a Napoleonic era French army in like whatever 12 mil or whatever it is now. The bolt action scale is. I think it's like 12.5 or whatever. I did have a sprue of Prussians knocking around. I got free with the mag, but I don't know where I put them. Ah, well. Lorcan is saying he did a scene for The Lost Destiny where Feeling gets a Comguard tank unit on Tokyo. Oh, fights a Comguard unit. Oh, very good. Nick saying dioramas are the best. The plan mine out for ages. It always starts with a simple core concept. The Orcs versus Jaws one started with like an idea of what would it look like if Orcs went fishing. Yeah, it looked good. It looked really good, Nick. Really did remind me of Jaws. We're going to need a bigger boat. Well executed. How long did you spend on it? Like, because you did a fair bit of work. I remember watching the video for it where you'd put it down and then draw in the bits on the board and where you decide to position things. But it looks fun. I may be tempted. Look at this bleeding brush. I may be tempted in the future. Like I was saying, the base was 2 sheets of foam core. I cut hex-shaped sections into the top sheet so the mechs could fit in, and I used texture paint and one of the scenic trees to make a clearing in the wood. Due to saying bolt action should be 12mm. It's not bolt action, Jude. It's their new Napoleonic epic scale stuff, and I think it's like 12 or 12 and a half or something like that. It's Warlord Games. Do I have a sprue? There should be. Literally, I had a sprue here yesterday. Here we go. Hold on, give me a second. So there you go. Like, so these guys are 6mm. So these, I don't know, they're like more than 2. So they must be like 12 or something like that. But these are the Prussians. Black powder, bottles, Waterloo, Prussian army. So this is what you got with the magazine, and they come in all these stands, and you just build units. So there you go. That's as close as I've gotten to playing Waterloo or Napoleonic era battles, as I own sprues of them. They nearly got me, lads, but I managed to avoid it. Even got little cannon, your commander, and these are the Prussians. So they're alright. It's no Battletech, I tell you. PC, I don't read Wargamers Illustrated for the articles. I just like all the pictures. Yeah. Some of the articles are a bit hit and miss. It depends what they are. Some of them are decent, but then that's the same with any magazine. It's like not everything in the magazine is going to be catered to your specific needs. And I mean, it is mainly focused on historics, which I don't actually have either many miniatures for, or like I don't play a historical game, so it's not really aimed directly for me, but it's sort of in the same hobby enough that I still buy it now, you know. I think I've been buying it for a year and a half or something like that. It's yeah, I like it though. It's still decent. It's a nice mix. And then, you know, specific sections will they'll show you up and coming products from different manufacturers, so that kind of helps as well. Like manufacturers that I probably wouldn't normally go out of my way to go looking for, they'll show you projects that they're working on or what's being done, that sort of thing. You know, I like it for that. Or if something crops up and piques me interest, you know. Every now and then they'll do like little mini games or little campaign games, or how to play, or they'll come, you know, they'll give you little rule sheets or how to make. I think it was like the last one was like a windmill from medieval era or something like that. Can't remember. But you know, there's a few different little projects that they do. And they do interviews as well with some of the game designers. So it's interesting to see that. Oh, can I say, I use weapon effects to put the muzzle flashes coming out of some of the mechs. I had a Thor that was jumping on a hand sculpted jump jets effects. I cut damage into the units with files and drills. Oh, nice. Sounds pretty dynamic. There'd be a lot of stick bombs. Yeah, for fishing, yeah. Like saying, cheers, dude. The Jaws one was about 5 weeks. The most recent Spoils of WoW maybe was 7 weeks. Oh, that's the one with the what's it called? Forge? Is it Forge Fiend? I think it's Forge. With the chaosy thing on the back of the truck, wasn't it? I think so. Awkward saying it was Tamiya textures diorama paint still have some for here. Nice. But yes, definitely orcs would be using with stick bombs in the Earl fishing. That I could definitely see. I think the only ones that would have the patience to use rod and rail would probably be commandos. The rest of them would just get bored. Harpoons or spears. Or stick bombs, as you said. I think the only ones that would bother with rod and rail would indeed be the blood axes. I can just imagine like a grot tied to the end of it or something like that with some scuba gear to keep him fresh. You know, with a hook tied to his back pointing out, if you get me. That'd be interesting. I suppose you could do like a fishing diorama where it's... I think some people have done it where it's acrylic. So they'll have... be like a cliff. And then they'll have the fishing rod going down. And then they'll fill it in with like clear acrylic or a dyed acrylic. So you could do that as well. Yeah, Nick was saying his was an orc truck town in the Mall Fiend. Yeah, I remember that. Gitman is saying there was the Forge Fiend and the Mauler Fiend. Orc is saying orcs know to say they're coming right for us before throwing the bombs in the water. True. Or just going full war boys with like stick bombs on the end of spears and just throwing themselves at them. Could see that happening. Being a good day to die and all that. Jeez, that was a great movie, wasn't it? I actually remember playing a Mad Max themed participation game in Salute. The one time I went in 2016 when I was living right beside the exhibition centre at the time in London. And there was a Mad Max sort of participation game that these lads had running, some older gentlemen, and it was great. You know, they'd come up with their own rule set and movement, and it was good fun. But they were all dressed up as like Mad Max sort of, and like I think it was like Mad Max 2 sort of era stuff. So these guys had been running this participation game on and off since the 80s or whatever, but it was great crack. It was good fun. Really enjoyed it. I've only been to Salute once. I should really get my arse over to some of the wargaming conventions in the UK more often. I'd never seen so many wargamers in one place at once before. Do you know what I mean? It was a bit perplexing coming from Ireland, and it's like, Jesus, there's this many of us. Gee, they're saying maybe Storm Boys would dive down with their rocket packs and try to stab at the shark using their choppers. Probably. They probably would. They're crazy enough to try it. Or maybe they'd like just tie a big boulder to their back and cut it loose and then use their jetpack to get back up or something. I don't know. They're orcs. They're creative. They'll come up with something and worry about physics later. That's usually the case. Did the Force guy survive? No. Right, we'll send someone else down. See if he survives. Usually they send a test grot. I'm pleasantly surprised that it's easy enough to paint these with them stuck to their base. Making decent progress as well. Getting through about half of them. It is 10 past 11 IST, Irish Standard Time, and what we're going to do is I'm going to finish up this base here of infantry. Get there, but oh, don't be clipping, don't be getting sloppy now. Getting excited that we're coming to the end of the stream. Don't want to be losing focus, getting sloppy. But I'll throw the US olive drab on these boys or girls. You really can't tell at this scale. And we're going to wrap up the stream for this evening once it's done. Hopefully you folks have enjoyed yourselves and have, more importantly, managed to get some paint on some miniatures. I've enjoyed it myself. It's good that I'm getting paint on miniatures again. I'm like I said, I am thoroughly enjoying Battletech. Between the gaming community that we have here and then actually participating in tournaments and the greater gaming community that run the tournaments and participate in the tournaments, I'm having great fun playing Battletech. It's kind of reminding me of like the golden years for me back in like the early 2000s. Back in like 4th and 5th edition, playing 40k. I'm getting that sort of vibe off it again. That's when I used to go to tournaments for 40k. I think the last one I went to was 2011, I think. January 2011. So a while ago, you know. But yeah, I'm enjoying the game. I'm having great fun. I'm wanting to paint miniatures, so it's a win-win across the board, you know. Get out of that hobby funk and get these miniatures painted up. So we'll leave it there. It's been great fun. If you aren't already subscribed, I suggest highly that you subscribe to the channel. If you haven't liked the video, please smash an L like there, because it'll help with the algorithm, YouTubey malark, whatever that is. And yeah, we'll be on again with another stream soon enough. We'll set up notifications so that it's spread out onto the old social media beforehand, so people have some notice. And we'll see you again soon. I hope you have gotten quite a few of your miniatures painted up. I've gotten most of these dudes done. There's a few more that I'll crack on with another day, and then I'll put the wash on them. Like I said, we're painting up the base and these guys, and then I put the model wash over anyway, and then pick out the details. So it doesn't take quite a lot to get these guys done. I'll do the base in the edges of it in black, and yeah, chip away at them. Doing great progress. Like I said, I'm enjoying the fact that they paint up quickly, you know. And I'll give you a shout. Lorcan is saying, let me know when you're ready to fill those infantry so I can bring a unit with an artillery cannon to ruin your day. True. I'll keep them hidden in hardened buildings or fortified buildings, but I'm sure, yeah, artillery will I think artillery will ruin anybody's day there, Lorcan. Orcs at 18 of the 40k universe. True. Like I say, we loves it when a plan comes together. Use bomb squigs as depth charges. That could totally work as well. Like I said, orcs will be creative. But until next time, we're going to have to say goodbye for now. If he could wave, he probably would. But we'll catch you in the next stream, guys. Hopefully I'll get the base coats done on all these guys, and I'll start throwing some model wash on them. And we'll catch you again soon. So thanks for joining in. And we'll see you in the next stream. Goodbye. Bye.